Welcome to Empowered to Grow, the podcast. I am your host, Hanan Al-Basha. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Empowered to Grow podcast. I'm your host, Hanan Al-Basha. I'm so happy to be here. Today's a solo episode, and that's because I wanted to share some insights that I've had lately working with a number of clients and mentees and everything else related to strategy and pivots specifically. And I think that's one of the things that we kind of think about a lot, but we don't know what it is, when to do it, how to go about it. And today I kind of wanted to address that. So without further ado, let's first clean my glasses because we need that. But other than that, let's talk about strategy. What is strategy? Strategy is kind of that direction that your company, your venture is going towards. It's the embodiment of the vision that you had when you first thought of that business. Now, it is translated into a number of components that dictate your vision, your mission, your revenue management, how are you going to make money, or where are you going to get funding or investment? Who are you going to serve? What are you going to serve them with? These are all components of the strategy. So that's a foundational part. What we have seen is there are times where you need to take a complete pivot in your strategy, what you thought was your North Star, and you have to divert. A pivot is a divert. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going backwards. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something completely different than what you had intended to. It just means you are kind of just taking a detour on the road. That would be because of factors internal in your venture or factors external. And, the biggest example, and I know I keep bringing it up a lot, but because there are a lot of lessons there, the pandemic and the lockdowns, and everyone had to shift. Those that weren't online had to become online. Those that were doing a service and they were, supporting people had to think of how to get that service still across using different channels. That's a strategic pivot because that entails it's new setups, it's new costs or different costs. It could be retraining for the staff. It could be new alliances and collaborations that you need to do with new platforms to be able to still be able to deliver on your service or your product. Same that happened with the product. There were those that, had to think, how can I create this product at home? Or how can I, supply chain work towards me? Think of the logistics, the delivery, food, F&B service had to shift big time because usually it was mostly about having a restaurant or a coffee shop or somewhere or a food truck, and you'd serve, and then now you're not in that space anymore and you can't be. And, so these are the kind of pivots we are talking about. But more importantly, let me first put together some internal pivots that you might need to think about. That could be a change of staff. That could be a change of technology. I know I keep talking about AI, but AI is shifting the way we do business. You no longer need entire teams to be able to deliver on something. Your team members could be trained to work with AI so they can become a lot more efficient, productive, serve more. These and optimize their operations. These are the kind of things that we're looking at when you're looking at how can I create a strategic, or how can I undergo a strategic pivot? But more importantly, and that's the point I wanted to make today, how can these pivots be engineered towards growth? And when we are talking about growth, and I love talking about growth, my doctoral studies about growth, and not necessarily just growth hacking and how do you kind of beat the algorithm, but actually how do you grow your business? We are looking at horizontal growth, vertical growth, international crossing borders, or even cities growth. These are all meant to take you in the direction towards serving more people and clients and being able to get into new markets and being able to sustain that, because sustainable growth is the most important. And I think this is where we can start highlighting the difference between startups and SMEs. And we might have addressed it before, but let me just kind of reiterate. Startups are kind of, I don't want to call them traditional because traditional sounds old model. It's not an old model. As an SME, did I say startups first? I was talking about SMEs. So an SME kind of has growth and stability and sustainability as part of the core of its strategy. It's not about hyper growth, which is more kind of the startup way. And because most startups, if not all, are either tech based or tech enabled, so the potential for rapid growth is kind of inherent within the business model, or it's supposed to be. But startups have SMEs. I apologize for the mix up today. SMEs are more conventional and conservative in the business models. This would entail a mom and pop shop. This would entail a service-based business such as an accountant. This would entail a farm. They doesn't mean they're not using technology. It just means that they're sustaining that space, physical or virtual, to be able to deliver on the product or service that they are doing. And then they're looking at expanding markets and expanding customer segments and being able to serve more. And then even their funding is more whether they're investing themselves into growing this business, and then it's kind of customer kind of funded afterwards by putting in the money from the revenues you are getting into growing that business, having multiple branches, having multiple representations across different geographies, countries even, and being able to kind of expand in that way, in a way that is, we're set here, great, let's look at the next step. We're set here, great, let's look at the next step. So it's more on the sequential growth based on a solid ground. Funding would come either from, loans or banks or even investors, and kind of that's where you start hearing silent and partner. They've invested the money, but they don't really run the business and everything else. A lot of the times, even the owner of the business might not even be running the business. They would get someone in to run the business, someone specialized in that field. Now, their growth and looking at their pivots would entail looking at their customer base, whom they're very also keen on establishing strong relationships with, because once they're a customer, they want to retain them for as long as possible. There's customer retention. Customer retention, of course, is important for any business, but this is a lot more on the relationship building. Then we're looking at if there's a shift in the customer kind of from taste and profiles and needs and wants and likes and dislikes, they're aware of it and they're kind of strategically pivoting to cater for that. And then we have shifts in supply chains and in logistics and in market dynamics. We have, of course, political and economic factors that we need to accommodate for and everything else. That's where you would start noticing kind of alarms in the business. It doesn't have to be a blaring alarm, but it could be a small thing. It could be a kind of a cap in the revenues. It could be a stagnation in the sales. It could be losing customers. That's not just, oh, we lost a customer one time. No, we're losing customers on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. These would be the alarms where you stop and say, what's happening? And do we need a strategic pivot? Is it like, are we still in touch with the customer? Are we still customer centric, as I like to refer to it? And are we still aware, are we serving them, the product or the services that cater to them and what they expect at this point in time? Is our pricing still competitive or justifiable? Like, are you giving the value that justifies the price that you are selling at? These are all elements that you would be looking at before saying, oh, we're pivoting, we're closing down this business unit, we're opening up a new one, we're employing AI everywhere, and this is where we're going. That would be so drastic, and that is not data-driven. I keep saying always, you make as informed as possible decisions based on the data that is available today. Could that shift tomorrow? Yes. But for an SME, the shifts are not as fast and are not as drastic. They take some time for it to marinate and work and kind of be embedded and input into the way things go within an SME. For a startup that is more on the vibrant side, it's accommodating. It's kind of one of the things that I remember that came up as a terminology for startups before we really started saying startups within my doctoral study was like born gazelles or international new ventures. These are kind of things that it's kind of much faster for them to become global, like kind of global startup at the get-go, because as well, as I said earlier, that dependence on the technology that could enable that. We have a customer in Japan and we have a customer in the UK and we have a customer in Brazil right now. And those kind of things are a lot more on the startup way, because they're all about product market fit. We have a product. Is it market fit? Is it kind of satisfying this customer set, the segmentation we're looking for? Let's go, let's roll, let's test it, and then let's iterate. That's where the MVP is, the minimum viable product. And then we've got the beta version, and then we've got the version 1 or version A, or whatever you want, however you want to call it. And we're always catering to the feedback. The feedback loop is much faster. And it is supported as well. Of course, there's bootstrapping at the beginning, and then you've got the family, friends, and fans, I call them, the FFFs. And then you have the angel investors, and you have the VCs and all of this, but they're all kind of benchmarked against milestones that you want, the traction you're getting, the revenues you are making on a monthly or an annual basis, the kind of customer base you are attracting, and of course, what sector you're in. Are you B2B, B2C, B2B2C, and all the other iterations that you can create out of it. That kind of a pivot or a strategic alignment would come from, okay, how many new users have we acquired today? Are our customers referring us? Are we getting the reviews? Is our technology able to keep up with what's happening? Are our staff able to deliver on the promise, the brand's promise for the product or the service that we are delivering? And those kind of indicator lights are a bit different. All in all, what we want and why you would have a venture, even if it's a nonprofit, even if it's in social entrepreneurship, at the end of the day, there is a pain, there's a gap in the market, and you have the vision to fulfill it, to be able to fill it in the best way possible from your set of expertise, your tacit knowledge, your experiences, your eye and the staff and the co-founders and everyone with you, that you are seeing this is where this should go, and this is how we can deliver on it. And that is important. In the day-to-day grind, whether it's an SME or a startup, you could get caught up in, are we fulfilling? Is there an order? Did we do this? Did we send this proposal out? Did we have this meeting? And kind of, it gets, I like to think of it as dusty. It's like a storm. It's a daily storm. And it's great. But you have to kind of have scheduled stops and intervals where you say, is this storm leading us? Are we moving within this storm towards strategically where we set out to be? Or are we just becoming reactive to everything that's happening around us internally and or externally? And if we are moving, are we moving as fast as we want to, as fast as sustainably we can, as kind of profitably as we had intended? And if the answer is no to any of these, you would stop and say, so what's not working? What's clogging up the pegs from moving, and everything from internally moving at a speed that we can sustain, a speed that we have planned, a speed that caters and answers to our customers and our stakeholders and our investors and everything else. And then we start the assessment. Okay, is it a shift in the customers? Is it a shift in our human capital, the people within the business? Is it the supply chain? Is it the logistics, the delivery channels? Do we need to do more virtual? Do we need to be more in person? Do we need to look at other markets? Is it external, or kind of the conflicts that are happening in the region where you're at? Change in tax law, change in leadership, or whatever it is. Are these influencing the business? And can we pivot away from the impact to be able to still move the needle forward for the business? These are all considerations that I would implore you to kind of think about. These kind of reviews, if you would like to think about them. Initially, the strategy was kind of that. Remember when I first started working like over 25 years ago, it was like, and now we work on the strategy. And that strategy document was this kind of holy document. And it was a 3 to 5 year vision, which is great because you want to know where you're going. The shifts and the changes in the external and the internal fronts were they were there, of course, because again, this is life changes, but they were not as drastic. Now at Maverica, where I'm so happy to be part of Maverica as co-founder and chief strategy officer, what are we doing? We are developing AI agents to augment enterprise functions. Can we set a strategy for the next 3 to 5 years? No. Why? Because that field of AI and everything related to it, the developments, the infrastructure, the deep tech capabilities, and everything else is too far out for us to think now what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. But we can still set our strategy for the next 12 to 18 months and work towards it. Will we need to do those kind of pivots and revises and see if we're still on track every quarter maximum? Yes. Because if we're falling behind on the technology side and being able to cater to our clients and making sure their AI agents are tip-top shape and all caught up and everything else, then we lose a lot. So we can't afford to have kind of a strategic overview every 6 months. That's too late when it comes to this field. But if you are more on the other sectors, and I want to say AI is impacting every sector at this point in time, and not in a bad way. Actually, it's impacting it positively if you're willing to explore how. Then you can have a bit more of a breather and kind of look, okay, maybe it's 4 to 6 months that we keep looking at the strategy, as long as those alarms that are going off are not being ignored by you and you're able to keep up with it. The end goal for any business person, SME, startup owner, or any investor, any stakeholder, is to have a sustainable, profitable business. And when you are clear on your strategy and you're clear on who you're serving, what you're serving them with, how are you serving them, the channels you are delivering your product or your service through, where it is, when you're going to be doing it, all of these questions, that's the 5 W's on the edge framework that I had mentioned a number of times before. Check the newsletter. The Business Doctor snippets is where, I share as much as possible. And this was the topic of the last Business Doctor snippet. These are the questions that are fundamental for you to keep looking at and keep making sure that you're on track with, that they are satisfying your business objective, the vision that came to you, the vision that came to the business owner. Even if you're one of the leaders in the business, you're one of the co-founders, how can we augment? How can we do better? How can we serve better? How can we retain our customers, open up new channels without overloading our infrastructure and still be able to deliver on the brand promise? These are all questions I hope you keep asking, and I hope your team is asking, because every person, every function within a venture can and does contribute to the strategic pivots of the business. And it is important that everyone is on board. It's important that this communication channel is always open, that every function is involved in that strategic overview. Where are we? What are we doing? Are we, where we want to be, or where we were intending on going? Or is there somewhere else that we could be looking into that might not yield fruits right away, but would be a great direction for the future of our company and how we show up and how we serve our customer base and how we contribute to our GDPs and our communities and everything else related to it? There I think every business owner has a huge vision for themselves, for their families, for their communities, for their countries, and for the world. And it is beautiful when you stay on track when it comes to that, and to be able always to keep it top of mind, North Star, where you're going. But sometimes routes change. Sometimes we have closures. Sometimes there's construction here. Sometimes there's a storm this way. And it's okay. It doesn't mean we won't get where we want to go. It doesn't mean we won't discover new destinations along the way. It just means that we're still at it. And I think that is the very important thing that I hope you think about every time you are looking at your business, and you are considering, is this time for a strategic pivot or not? And how will this pivot contribute to our growth and our sustainability and our profitability, without imploding the business within, and without compromising on the delivery of your product or your service and your brand promise to your stakeholders overall, not just your customers, everyone that has a stake in your business. So I think I'm good there, unless anyone has any questions. Let me just check if we have any that I didn't know about, and then I can answer them. So let's see. Okay, I think we're good. Yep, I think we're good for now. Please, when you do see this, if it's on YouTube, if it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, LinkedIn, wherever you see it, and you do have something to share, strategic pivots that you were able to conduct in your own business, that were able to serve your business's growth and that of your stakeholders, please do share it. I love learning from everyone. I think we all have something to share and to teach, and that's always an amazing kind of gift that you're able to give. So without further ado, if you are not subscribed to the Business Doctor Snippets on LinkedIn, please do. If you listen to this episode and you have something to share or something to reflect on, or even a question you would like to put out there for me to answer, or anyone else that sees your question, please do. I think learning and growing and adapting is something that we all do, and no one is a master at it. We feed off each other's energy and tacit knowledge. And I think this is the beautiful thing about being in the business world, is everyone you cross paths with could give you a lesson or take a lesson from you. And this is how we all grow together. So until then, I'll be seeing you next week, hopefully, next Wednesday, as always. And I wish you love, abundance, and prosperity. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the Empowered to Grow podcast. I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, know that empowered you empowers others. Love, abundance, and prosperity to you all.